questions for the examination. So under this topic, we have an essay which includes classification of drugs used in peptic ulcer, and you may be asked to describe the mechanism of action, pharmacokinetics, adverse effects and clinical uses, and drug interactions of proton pump inhibitors. And some of the short notes covered under this topic will be H2 blockers, antacids, sucralfate, and anti-H. pylori drugs. So I will be explaining to you each of these questions, which will be useful for your exams. So first we'll see what is peptic ulcer. Peptic ulcer is nothing but an erosion in the mucosa of either the stomach or duodenum or both. In case it is stomach, it is known as gastric ulcer, and in case of duodenum, it is known as duodenal ulcer. So why does peptic ulcer occur? What is the pathogenesis? So it is mainly due to imbalance between the aggressive factors and defensive factors. So aggressive factors, we have examples of gastric acid, pepsin, bile, and also H. pylori. So these all aggravate the causation of peptic ulcer, whereas the defensive factors are very weak. When they are weak, the gastric ulcer occurs. So defensive factors like mucus bicarbonate, prostaglandins, and nitric oxide. When there is an imbalance between these two factors, there is the formation of peptic ulcer. So we have to address this pathogenesis to either reduce the aggressive factors or to increase the defensive factors in our treatment for peptic ulcer. So how are we going to proceed about the treatment? So the drugs used for peptic ulcer classification, you have mainly three groups of drugs, or rather four groups. So the first group, you have gastric acid secretion inhibitors, which are nothing but the group of drugs which inhibit the gastric acid secretion, thereby reducing the aggravating factor. And the other group, second group, is gastric acid neutralizers. So these group of drugs, they neutralize the gastric acid. That is, they increase the gastric pH. And the third group of drugs are ulcer protectives, which nothing but they coat the ulcer surface and protect the ulcer surface. And the last group of drugs, they act on H. pylori, that is the bacterium which causes peptic ulcer. So this group of drugs targets the H. pylori bacterium, thereby uh, healing the already formed ulcer and also prevents the further formation of ulcers. So under the gastric acid secretion inhibitors, the first group is antihistaminics. So you must have known about antihistaminics. There are mainly two types of receptors for histamine, H1 and H2. H1 antihistaminics are used for mainly inhibiting the secretions. That is, they are used for common cold. Whereas this H2 group of antihistaminics, this H2 receptor is present in the stomach, thereby inhibiting this type of receptors will inhibit the gastric acid secretion. Examples of H2 antihistaminics, we have cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine, and roxatidine. The next group of drugs is proton pump inhibitors, where we have drugs like omeprazole, esomeprazole, pantoprazole, lansoprazole, rabiprazole, and dexrabiprazole. The next group of drugs is prostaglandin analogs, where you have misoprostol. And anticholinergics, which act on the M3 receptors, muscarinic type 3 receptors, we have pyranzipine, propanthelin, and oxyphenonium. So these group of drugs inhibit the gastric acid secretion. And the second group of drugs which neutralize the gastric acid, also known as antacids, they are divided into two types, systemic or non-systemic, based on the type of the action in the body. The systemic antacids, they act systemically. Examples, we have sodium bicarbonate and sodium citrate. And the non-systemic, they have only local action. They are not absorbed systemically. Here we have magnesium hydroxide, magnesium trisilicate, aluminum hydroxide, megaltrate, and calcium carbonate. So this non-systemic type of antacids are only used commonly because they have minimal adverse effects. The next group of drugs is ulcer protectives, where we have sucralfate and colloidal bismuth subcitrate. Here sucralfate is the most commonly used drug under this group, whereas colloidal bismuth subcitrate, because it has some adverse effects like blackening of tongue, it is used only in combination for regimen used against H. pylori. The last group of drugs, we have anti-H. pylori drugs, where we have mostly antibiotics along with, which is given along with the proton pump inhibitors. So we'll be seeing the anti-H. pylori drugs in terms of regimen at the last. Now coming to the mechanism of action. So here I have summarized the basic acid secretion. How does it happen inside the stomach? And first we will see the acid secretion, and then I will teach you about the drugs acting in each step. So first, if you look at this, this is the parietal cell in the stomach, and this is the superficial epithelial cell. So from the parietal cell, as you can see here, this H plus and Cl plus are produced, which will combine together to form the acid. And from the superficial epithelial cell, mucus and bicarbonate are produced, which is for cytoprotection. And here, if you just look here, this gastrin is the stimulus for gastric acid secretion, so which stimulates the cholecystokinin secretion, and thereby histamine is released from the ECL cell. This histamine goes and binds to the H2 receptor in the parietal cell, and thereby it stimulates the H plus K plus ATPase, which is nothing but the proton pump. So ultimately, all the receptors, they lead to the proton pump stimulation. So here we saw the histamine pathway now. The second pathway, acetylcholine. Acetylcholine can act through the M3 receptor, and it can also stimulate the proton pump. And also this prostaglandins E2 and I2, they can stimulate the EP3 receptor and thereby stimulating the proton pump. So ultimately this proton pump, when it is stimulated, there is influx of potassium and efflux of H plus. This H plus again combines with Cl minus, and it produces the gastric acid. The next cell on the superficial epithelial cell, what happens is both acetylcholine and prostaglandin, they both act by acting on the receptors and thereby stimulating the production of mucus and bicarbonate. So this is the normal mechanism of gastric acid secretion and mucus and bicarbonate secretion in the stomach. Now we'll see the drugs, where the drugs should actually block the acid secretion and they should stimulate the mucus and bicarbonate secretion. So we'll see the steps where they act. Now this muscarinic antagonists, they act on the M3 receptors and they block it, thereby blocking the acid secretion. And H2 antagonists, that is H2 antihistaminics, they block the H2 receptors and thereby inhibiting the acid secretion. And therefore, the important group is proton pump inhibitors, which inhibit the H plus K plus ATPase, that is proton pump, and thereby inhibiting the major step of acid secretion. And antacids, they neutralize the H plus and KCl, the H plus and Cl, that is the gastric acid, and thereby producing the relief. And then here this mucus and bicarbonate secretion, it is stimulated by muscarinic antagonists and also misoprostol. And here sucralfate, it coats the ulcer. And then H. pylori, this is treated by using bismuth, metronidazole, tetracycline, clarithromycin and amoxicillin. So all these summarize the mechanism of action of all the group of drugs which act on the peptic ulcer. So just I told you before that classification of drugs, the first group, the drugs which neutralize the gastric acid secretion like antacids, and then the drugs which reduce the gastric acid secretion like proton pump inhibitors, H2 blockers, and then mucosal protective drugs like sucralfate and anti-H. pylori drugs. We'll see about the first group of drugs, the drugs which neutralize the gastric acid. So they are also known as antacids. They are of two types, systemic and non-systemic. Under systemic, we have sodium bicarbonate, and under non-systemic, we have two types called buffer type and non-buffer type. Under buffer type, we have aluminum hydroxide and magnesium trisilicate. Under non-buffer type, we have magnesium hydroxide, calcium carbonate, and simethicone. So antacids are the most commonly used group of drugs for peptic ulcer, which are used over the counter. You must have heard about Gelusil. So Gelusil is nothing but an antacid, which is used commonly. And these are nothing but weak bases. They neutralize the acid pH, and food enhances the action of this group of drugs So these group of drugs are given after food. So how they act? Sodium bicarbonate, which is nothing but a systemic antacid, it acts by combining with HCl and produces sodium chloride, carbon dioxide, and water. So this sodium chloride causes fluid retention. So whenever there is sodium chloride, sodium retention, there is also fluid retention in the body. And CO2, the CO2 produced will cause belching. So these two are major adverse effects of systemic antacids like sodium bicarbonate. Therefore, it is not used nowadays because of these side effects. So which group of antacids are used commonly? They are nothing but the non-systemic antacids like aluminum hydroxide, magnesium trisilicate. So they since they are known as buffer type, they have no acid base disturbance. So the adverse effects are minimal, such as GIT adverse effects. Either constipation or diarrhea can be produced. Constipation is produced by aluminum hydroxide and diarrhea is produced by magnesium trisilicate. So to neutralize the adverse effects, this aluminum hydroxide and magnesium trisilicate are combined together. Therefore, the constipation and diarrhea is neutralized, and therefore no adverse effects. They are very minimal adverse effects. So antacids usually contain a combination of aluminum hydroxide and magnesium trisilicate. The second type is non-buffer type. So examples, we have calcium carbonate and magnesium hydroxide. These are very powerful and they have fast action. But there is an adverse effect called milk alkali syndrome, which is due to the calcium component. This calcium carbonate, when combined with milk, when somebody takes milk along with this antacid, it can lead to hypercalcemia, renal insufficiency, and alkalosis. Since these drugs are available over the counter, inadvertent chronic use of these drugs can lead to the adverse effects. So other antacids are simethicone and sodium alginate. So simethicone is nothing but a silicon polymer. It mainly acts as an anti-foaming agent and it reduces the flatulence and hiccups. So it prevents the foaming due to the excess gastric acid. Therefore, it reduces the flatulence. Flatulence is nothing but bloating. And it is pharmacologically inert. You need not worry about the adverse effects. It has only local action. And sodium alginate is a viscous gel which coats over the gastric acid. Therefore, it acts as a mechanical barrier, thereby preventing the acid causing erosion over the mucus. Now, an important topic from this antacids you have to learn is the drug interactions. So antacids, they are well known to cause drug interactions. So I have prepared a small animation. So T stands for tetracycline, FQ stands for fluoroquinolones, I stands for itraconazole, which is nothing but an antifungal drug. D stands for digoxin, which is a drug used in congestive cardiac failure. And P stands for phenytoin, which is an anticonvulsant. So antacids, they combined or they chelate with all these drugs and therefore producing reduced absorption of all the other drugs. Therefore, what precaution you have to take or what advice you have to give the patient before prescribing antacids is you have to advise the patient to have a gap of at least 2 hours before giving these drugs. So you have to either adjust the dosage of antacids 2 hours before or after the administration of these drugs. So this should be kept in mind whenever you prescribe antacids. The second group of drugs, is drugs which reduce the gastric acid secretion. So here we have 4 groups. So first group is H2 receptor antagonist, that is antihistaminics. We have cimetidine, ranitidine, famotidine, and nizatidine here. The second group is PPI or proton pump inhibitors, which is omeprazole, pantoprazole, lansoprazole, and esomeprazole. And the third group is anticholinergics, which include pyrazipine, tilanzipine, propanthelin, and oxyphenonium. The fourth group is prostaglandin analogs, which includes misoprostol, enprostil, and rioprostil. So coming to the first group of drugs, H2 receptor antagonists or H2 antihistaminics. So as we already saw in the picture, so there is competitive inhibition of the H2 receptors, histamine receptors in the gastric parietal cells. so thereby suppressing the basal and food stimulated acid secretion. So both the basal and food stimulated secretion, acid secretions are suppressed, thereby it is very effective in uh, uh, preventing or curing the peptic ulcer. So it blocks the 90% of nocturnal acid secretion, and it is given usually twice daily. So when you compare various H2 antagonists, you can see here this bioavailability of cimetidine is more when compared to the other drugs. The newer drug nizatidine has a bioavailability of more than 90%, and the relative potency, when you see here, famotidine has more potency than all the other drugs. And half-life is usually mostly it is similar, and duration of action, famotidine has 12 hours of action, thereby it can be given BD. Mostly all the drugs are given BD. And then dose, when you give cimetidine, you have to give 400 milligrams. All the drugs are given twice daily. Ranitidine in a dose of 150 milligrams, famotidine 20 milligrams, and nizatidine 150 milligrams. And this, you have to remember, cimetidine can cause inhibition of cytochrome P450 enzymes, thereby it can cause interaction with other drugs. So H2 receptor antagonists have clinical uses of, they can be used in GERD, which is nothing but gastroesophageal reflux disease, and they can be used in gastric and also duodenal ulcers, and in NSAID induced ulcers. NSAID is nothing but non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. And in Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, where there is increased secretion of gastrin, and to prevent stress ulcers or ulcer recurrence. In all these cases, H2 receptor antagonists are very useful. And coming to the adverse effects, mainly other drugs are extremely safe except cimetidine, which can cause gynecomastia in males and galactorrhea in females only on long-term use. In this picture, you can see gynecomastia male. So as I already told you, cimetidine causes inhibition of cytochrome P450 enzymes such as cytochrome P1A2, 2C9, 2D6, and 3A4. Therefore, it can prolong the T half of all these drugs such as warfarin, theophylline, phenytoin, beta blockers, oral hypoglycemic drugs such as sulfonylureas, and also metronidazole. So what will happen as a consequence? Since these drugs the half-life is prolonged, there can be toxicity due to these drugs, which is very dangerous. So you need to be aware when you prescribe cimetidine that it can cause increased plasma levels of the above drugs. Now coming to the next group, important group, proton pump inhibitors. So these drugs are usually pro-drugs. What do you mean by pro-drug? So whenever a drug is given, whenever a drug is taken inside the body, if it goes inside and then it is activated into the active form, then it is known as pro-drug. Initially, when you take the drug, it is inactive. Inside the body, it is converted into the active form. So which is the active form of the drug here? It is nothing but a sulfinamide cation. So what does the sulfinamide cation do? It forms a SS covalent bond, disulfide bond, which is a covalent bond. As you all know, in chemistry you must have learned covalent bond is an irreversible bond and a strong bond. So this forms a covalent bond with proton pump H plus K plus ATPase. Therefore, this has irreversible action. So when does its action end? Only when new proton pumps are synthesized in the body. So it takes usually more than 24 hours to synthesize new proton pumps. Therefore, the duration of action lasts for 24 hours. Hence, you need to dose the drug once daily. So that is a major advantage. So there is a new group of drugs which are called as PCAB, which are nothing but potassium competitive acid pump blockers. So this thing you can remember for your entrance exams. So when are proton pump inhibitors given? They are administered in fasting state just before food. Why? Because they are very effective in acidic pH. And the duration of action, as I told you, it is 24 hours. And this group of drugs is metabolized by the liver, and therefore dosage reduction is needed in severe hepatic failure. And like H2 blockers, this group of drugs has a wide variety of uses in GERD, gastric and duodenal ulcer, NSAID induced ulcer, Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, to prevent stress ulcers or ulcer recurrence, and also in H. pylori associated ulcers. Especially in H. pylori associated ulcers, this proton pump inhibitors are used in as a part of the regimen. And while comparing the different proton pump inhibitors, as you can see here, the bioavailability of esomeprazole and lansoprazole is more than 80%. And also the usual dosage is also different. Omeprazole and esomeprazole have similar dose, 20 to 40 milligrams, and lansoprazole is given at a dose of 30, dexlansoprazole at 30 to 60 milligrams, pantoprazole at 40 milligrams, and rabiprazole at 20 milligrams. Usually all these drugs are given once daily. So the drug interactions of proton pump inhibitors, they are less potent enzyme inhibitors than cimetidine, which is nothing but a H2 blocker. Hence you need not worry much about the drug interactions, but they can prolong the T-half of warfarin, carbamazepine and phenytoin. So you need to be careful while prescribing these three drugs along with proton pump inhibitors such as omeprazole, esomeprazole and lansoprazole. Now coming to anticholinergics, you have two drugs here called propantholin and oxyphenonium. How do they act? They act by blocking the M3 muscarinic receptor in the gastric parietal cell. So they do not cross the blood-brain barrier. Therefore, the CNS side effects are lesser. They block the basal acid secretion more than the food-induced acid secretion. But as any other antimuscarinic, they have adverse effects such as blurred vision, dry mouth, urinary retention and constipation. Therefore, they are not very popular as much as H2 blockers and proton pump inhibitors. So, and other group of drugs, pyranzipine and tilanzipine, are M1 receptor blockers. They are selective and they are not available in India. They are available only in Canada and Europe. The next group of drugs is prostaglandin analogs. So we have prostaglandin E2. So what is the action of prostaglandin E2? It inhibits the acid secretion by acting on the parietal cell. It also enhances the mucosal blood flow, thereby stimulating the secretion of mucus and bicarbonate by the epithelial cell. So if we give prostaglandin analogs, it will inhibit both acid secretion and also stimulate the secretion of mucus and bicarbonate, thereby dual action. So misoprostol is a prostaglandin E1 analog. So it can be given in the dose of 200 micrograms QID. QID is nothing but 4 times a day. So this is useful especially in NSAID induced ulcer. So where NSAID, it depletes the mucus layer of the stomach. Thereby this restores the mucus layer. And in also in chronic heavy smokers, and these two are the major indications for misoprostol in peptic ulcer. So what are the disadvantages? This misoprostol can stimulate the smooth muscle contraction and produce diarrhea, colicky pain of the stomach and all of the abdomen, and also it can cause vomiting. And the other disadvantage is it needs multiple dosing, that is 4 times a day, which is very cumbersome, and therefore the patient compliance is very poor. Now coming to the third major group, mucosal protectives, we have sucralfate and colloidal bismuth subcitrate here. So sucralfate is commonly prescribed in general practice. So sucralfate, it acts by coating over the ulcer crater. So it acts as an acid resistant physical barrier over the coating of the ulcer, thereby preventing further action of acid and erosion of the ulcer. Like antacid, sucralfate also has drug interactions. So sucralfate can bind to tetracyclines and fluoroquinolones, which are nothing but antibiotics. And also it can bind to H2 blockers. So they are also used in peptic ulcer. And the sucralfate can bind to digoxin and phenytoin. So it can absorb all these drugs and reduce the efficacy. So the same rule applies here. You need to maintain a gap of 2 hours between the administration of sucralfate and these drugs. Sucralfate has other uses such as stomatitis, ulcers on the mouth, and also for bed sores. So sucralfate can be used for these conditions also. Now coming to the last group of drugs, They are anti-H. pylori drugs. So what is H. pylori? H. pylori, also known as Helicobacter pylori, it is a bacterium which is very unique in that it colonizes the stomach. So how does it withstand the gastric acid in the stomach? So it just penetrates the gastric mucosa and it stays in the stomach. How? It converts urea into ammonia. It produces the enzyme called urease, thereby converting urea into ammonia, which just forms a coating over the bacterium. Since ammonia is basic, it forms a protective coating around the bacterium, thereby not allowing the acid to act on the bacterium. So thereby it lives on the stomach, thereby producing gastric ulcer. So biopsy of ulcers has showed H. pylori positivity in 90% of duodenal ulcers and 60 to 70% of gastric ulcers. Why H. pylori is very important to treat? Because it's a risk factor for gastric adenocarcinoma. So this H. pylori infection has shown to be causing recurrent gastric and duodenal ulcers. So whenever a patient has ulcers which are very recurrent and resistant to the usual proton pump inhibitor therapy or H2 blocker therapy, then we need to probe and find out through endoscopy whether the patient has some H. pylori infection. Only by treating this H. pylori infection will the patient be relieved of the recurrent ulcer formation. So this H. pylori treatment is useful in duodenal and gastric ulcers, and also it is the only treatment. This for a MALT type of lymphoma, that is mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, maltoma. This H. pylori treatment is itself sufficient, which causes disappearance of the maltoma. And for also non-ulcer dyspepsia, this is useful. So as I already told you, how does this H. pylori produce peptic ulcer? So this H. pylori, it just erodes the mucus layer and it colonizes the gastric epithelium. It releases the enzyme called urease, converts urea into ammonia. This ammonia neutralizes the gastric acid because it is basic. It neutralizes the acid. So therefore, it can cause mucosal damage. So it produces inflammation and also there is damage to the mucosa, thereby producing peptic ulcer. So how do you treat H. pylori? So there are various therapy and regimens, and initially there was a dual therapy which had a lot of adverse effects, and efficiency also was less. Therefore it is withdrawn and it is not used nowadays. So now we have three regimens here: triple therapy, quadruple therapy, and sequential therapy. Sequential therapy is the latest one with a very good efficacy rate of more than 90%. So what is triple therapy? Triple therapy consists of a set of 3 drugs given for 14 days. So you can remember it with this mnemonic OCA or OCM. O stands for omeprazole, C stands for clarithromycin, and A stands for amoxicillin, or M stands for metronidazole. So these 3 drugs are combined together. So omeprazole in a dose of 20 milligrams BD, and clarithromycin 500 milligrams BD, and amoxicillin 1 gram BD, or metronidazole 500 milligrams BD. And the second type of triple therapy includes ranitidine bismuth citrate, and then T stands for tetracycline, and M stands for metronidazole, or C clarithromycin. So ranitidine bismuth 400 milligrams BD, tetracycline 500 milligrams BD, and metronidazole or clarithromycin both 500 milligrams BD. So this is the first line of therapy. So whenever a patient is proven to be H. pylori positive, so this is the regimen which is to be tried first. So because this has less adverse effects and this is proven to have around 80 to 90% efficacy rate. And the second therapy, quadruple therapy, is tried only when the first line regimen fails or there is recurrence even after the first line regimen. So this quadruple therapy is also given for 14 days. So you can remember this using OBMT. O stands for omeprazole, B stands for bismuth subsalicylate, M stands for metronidazole, and T stands for tetracycline. Omeprazole, as usual, 20 milligrams once daily. Here you must remember they are not given BID, it is not uniform. So here omeprazole is given OD, bismuth subsalicylate 525 milligrams, 2 tablets QID, that is 4 times, metronidazole 250 milligrams QID, tetracycline 500 milligrams QID. So quadruple stands for 4 drugs. So this is used only as a second line when there are cases resistant to the first line therapy. The last one and the newer one is sequential therapy, which is given only for 10 days. Thereby, it has good patient compliance. The patient will definitely complete this therapy. And here there is a two-step regimen. For first 5 days, you can give omeprazole and amoxicillin, OA. So omeprazole is given in the dose of 20 milligrams BD with amoxicillin 1 gram BD. And then from day 6 to day 10, OCT, omeprazole, clarithromycin and tinidazole. Omeprazole at 20 milligrams BD, clarithromycin at 500 milligrams BD, and also tinidazole at 500 milligrams BD. So this sequential therapy has good patient tolerance since the adverse effects are less, and also the regimen gets over by 10 days. So this finishes this lecture. Thank you all for listening to this lecture patiently. And if you have any doubts, you can give your doubts in the comment section. I will answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful session with us, ma'am.
Yeah.
Dear viewers, if you have any queries, you can still post it on our Facebook page to get it answered later on. And we have still interesting session upcoming tomorrow, where Dr. Mohammed Salim handling a session on abdominal, pelvic and peritoneal cavity. And in the second session, Dr. Swarnalatha handling a session on pregnancy and previous LSCS. Meanwhile, you can like and subscribe to our Facebook and YouTube channel to get the latest updates. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the session.